Relocating to a new country can be a refreshing yet daunting experience, and finding suitable accommodation can be a crucial part to settling in. Whether you are an international student, a digital nomad, a working professional with a family, or merely contemplating a move to the UK, this video is a comprehensive guide that offers valuable insights into the process of renting a house here in the UK as a foreigner. Also, the information in this video would help you quickly find and secure suitable accommodation tailored to your unique needs and preferences. First thing first, let's start by discussing the UK rental market, which is quite diverse and offers a range of options from bustling urban areas to charming countrysides. Now, each region in the UK has its rental trends and pricing, so it is crucial to research the area you are interested in before making any decision. For instance, renting in cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham can be more expensive than renting in small towns like Warrington. You also want to start researching different neighborhoods to find one that suits your preference and need. It is advisable to select an area close to your daily commutes, like maybe your school or your workplace. You also want to know if you want to live in the city center or outskirts of the city. Now, renting a property here in the UK within a city center can be more expensive than renting a property outskirts of the city center. Now, to find the perfect location on where to rent a house when you're doing your research, you want to take into account factors such as proximity to work, public transportation, schools, and amenities, because all of this can affect your overall quality of life and your living experience. Now, in the UK, there are various types of housing options available to choose from, including apartments, terraced, semi-detached, and detached homes. Now, it is essential to understand the available options to narrow down your search based on your preference and budget, because the kind of housing options you chose to go for here in the UK can affect your rent. Now, detached houses are more expensive than semi-detached houses, and semi-detached houses are more expensive than terraced houses. So you want to research this to know the kind of house that works for you. Now, a terraced house is like 3 or 4 or more houses all joined together. A semi-detached house is just 2 houses joined together, while a detached house is a stand-alone house. Also, when searching for a place to stay, it is essential to consider whether you did prefer furnished or unfurnished accommodation, as it can impact your initial expenses and convenience. So here in the UK, you can rent a house fully furnished or semi-furnished or unfurnished. Now, you want to think about your needs and preference to know what kind of house will work best for you, whether it's semi-furnished or furnished or unfurnished. Now, when we were renting in the UK before we bought our house, we actually rented fully furnished houses when we first moved to the UK, and after that we went for semi-furnished house. We've never gone for a fully unfurnished house. So let me just explain this in detail. For the fully furnished house, the house will be fully furnished. Some houses will even come with cooking utensils. You don't need to get your cooking utensils. What you need is just your foodstuff and your clothes. But for some houses, you might need to get your cooking utensils. That's for some fully furnished house. So a fully furnished house is literally a house where everything is there for you. And then for semi-furnished houses are houses where you have a fully furnished kitchen, but you will not have any furniture in the house. So basically, you have your cooker, your fridge, freezer, your washing machine, and your dishwasher in the kitchen. And then unfurnished house will basically be nothing in the house. The kitchen will not be fully kitted. Maybe you might only have like a cooker, and you might need to buy your fridge, freezer, washing machine, and dishwasher, depending on how the house look like. So basically, this my mini explanation is just to give an idea of what semi-furnished, unfurnished, and fully furnished accommodation looks like here in the UK. Now, before renting a house here in the UK, when you are trying to understand the rental market here in the UK, you should also take time out to think about the property features such as car park, a garden, or a communal area that you might need. By considering factors like this, you can find a property that would cater to your requirement. Now, in the UK, some property having garden is a luxury, and some property having like a car park is also luxury, because not all houses here in the UK comes with a car park. For some houses, especially apartments, you might have to pay. If you have a car and you want a car park slot, you might have to pay to get that. So before you rent at all, think about what you want the house to come with. Now, if you're renting an apartment, you probably will not have a garden area. And if you're renting a house, you probably will not have a social area like you would in an apartment. Now, some apartments here in the UK, especially those ones tagged as luxurious, would usually have a gym, and they won't have like a common area where they'll have like open kitchen, or they'll have like where you can watch TV, or where you can hang out with friends, or even host a party. Because we used to live in a luxurious apartment before, or an apartment that was termed luxurious, and we had all of that. But when we moved to a house, we didn't have all of that facility. Now, I will leave links to the house we're living in before and the apartment we're living in before, and the apartment was fully furnished. We really enjoyed the apartment before we moved. Basically, if you're wondering why we moved from the apartment to a house, we were buying our house in the UK and we wanted to save more money, so we said, okay, it would be nice to leave the city center and leave the luxurious fully furnished apartment and look for a house outskirts of the city center to save money. And at the end of the day, that move helped us save about £500 monthly until we bought our own house. That's why I mentioned earlier in the video that you really need to consider your needs and what you need from a house and the kind of house you want, because it can really impact your budget. Also, before renting in the UK as a newbie, take time out to understand your rights as a tenant to avoid being taken advantage of by some scrupulous letting agents and landlords. You want to take time out to learn about tenants' rights and responsibilities to ensure a harmonious landlord/tenant relationship. Also, seek advice from tenant organizations or legal professional if needed. Now, when renting a property in the UK as a foreigner, there are legal requirements you need to meet. You will be expected to provide certain documentation such as proof of identity, a right to rent share code, evidence of employment with income, and references. Now, ensuring you have these documents readily available can help you simplify the house renting process and ensure a smoother experience. So for those unfamiliar with the right to rent share code, the right to rent share code is a UK regulation which requires that landlords and letting agents to check the immigration status of potential tenants, as landlords and letting agents are only allowed to rent to foreign tenants with legal right to live, study, and work here in the UK. Now, let's talk about budgeting and the cost of renting in the UK. In addition to the monthly rent, there are other costs to consider, such as council tax, utility bills, that is water, home broadband, electricity and gas, and other potential service charges. So be sure to factor in these expenses when planning your budget for accommodation here in the UK. Establishing a practical budget that accurately factors your income and living expenses like rent, utility, feeding, and transportation is essential to prevent you from renting a house that might stretch your finances thin. Now, if you are looking for available renters, you can visit various online platforms like Zoopla, Rightmove, and On The Market. My go-to is always Rightmove. Most of the houses I've rented, I found them on Rightmove. The three platforms I have just mentioned offer detailed information and pictures of rental properties alongside with the contact details of the landlord or letting agent that is advertising the property. Alternatively, if you are looking for a shared accommodation, you can use online platforms like Spare Room to find shared accommodation. More so, you can consider working with estate agents. They can assist you to finding suitable property, arrange viewings, and guide you through the application process of renting a house here in the UK. Remember that some agents will charge fees, so inquire about this upfront before you go with their services, so you are not caught by surprise when they ask you to pay a fee after they found a property for you. Furthermore, you can rent a residential property from a corporate and individual landlords. Now, if you are looking to rent a property from the landlord directly, I suggest you use platforms like Open Rent to look for properties, because most landlords would advertise their properties themselves on Open Rent. Now, I always suggest you rent from corporate landlords. So if you are wondering what corporate landlords are here in the UK, so corporate landlords are like renting from your university if you're a student. So university's accommodation is corporate, like it's owned by a company, and you can also rent from companies like but also only have houses in the northwest of the UK, and you can rent from companies like Get Living have houses in the northwest here in the UK, and they also have houses in London. I've rented from Get Living and I've rented from and I really like their houses. Their houses are clean, nice. If you have any issue, they come fix it on time. So our luxurious apartment, we rented it from Get Living, while the house we were staying before we moved to our own property that we now own, we got it from also. So basically, a corporate landlord is, like the name implies, it's a corporate body that owns the house, not like an individual person that owns the house. So basically, I prefer renting from corporate landlords here in the UK because it's just straight to the point and there's less bias than renting from individual landlord that will judge you and everything that you are before they give you their house. Anyway, if you have watched this video to this point, it means you find it valuable. So give this video a like, subscribe for more informative videos like this video, and share this video with someone who will find it beneficial. So here's what to do when you find a rental property you want to rent in the UK, and the 8 stages you may have to go through. Now, the first stage is to contact the landlord or letting agent. Once you find the property you want to rent, it is a good idea to promptly contact the landlord or letting agent to express your interest. As UK residential property always stay on the residential market for a short period of time, like houses here in the UK go off the rental market ASAP. You can do this by email or phone. The contact details for the landlord or letting agent of the property are usually on the listing adverts. Now, when you contact the landlord or the letting agent, you want to inquire about the availability of the property. Once they say the property is still available, you want to schedule a viewing to inspect the property in person or online to get a good look of the property and decide whether the property is a good fit for you or whether you like the area where the property is. Now, in the UK, it is usually mandatory to have a viewing before renting a property, so it is implausible that you can avoid this stage. However, if you are unavailable to attend, you can always send someone to view the property on your behalf. Now, the second stage is viewing. During your viewing, you want to take note of the property's conditions, amenities, and any potential issues with the property. Also, prepare a list of questions to ask the landlord and letting agent during the viewing. Asking questions will give you a better understanding of the tenancy terms, the lease length, and any additional cost involved in renting the property. It is always good to be prepared to avoid any surprises later. You see, in the UK, it is common to have to pay for a car parking space, like I mentioned earlier in this video, on a monthly basis if you need it, especially when you are renting an apartment. So asking about additional costs can help you have a clear picture of what renting the property entails financially. If you have noticed throughout this video, I have emphasized on having a practical budget and knowing your finance before renting here in the UK. Just because here in the UK, there are consequences for missing the rent. If you miss paying your rent for a month, you can pay interest. I think you will have to pay 1% or 3% interest when you're paying the money, and it can also affect your credit score because you would mostly pay your rent through direct debit or through standing order. And if you don't pay your rent on time and your direct debit or standing order keep bouncing, it can affect your credit score. So that's why you have to be financially mindful when you're renting a house here in the UK. Ensure you rent a house that is within your budget and your financial capability. The third stage is the application process. Now, if you decide to proceed with the property after viewing it, you will request an application form from the landlord or letting agent. Now, you want to complete the application form accurately by providing all necessary information and then send it back to the landlord or letting agent. Now, the reason why you want to fill the application form accurately is because a background check or a credit check can be done on you. Kindly note that your application might be accepted or rejected at this stage, so it's not guaranteed that you will get the house when you put in your application to rent a property. Also, during your application process, you can discuss and negotiate the leasing term if you want to lease the property for 1 year or 2 years. You can also talk about the rental price. You can negotiate that, the deposit amount. Maybe you want to pay for 4 weeks instead of 5 weeks, or 5 weeks instead of 6 weeks, and any other special conditions, you can negotiate that. Now, at this stage, you also want to clarify responsibilities regarding maintenance, utilities, and council tax. You will also need to provide references, so be prepared to provide references from your previous landlords or employers or universities if you are a student. Also, you want to ensure that your references are up to date and they can vouch for your reliability as a tenant. Likewise, at the application stage, you will need to provide proof of identity like a passport or your biometrics resident permit card, a right to rent share code, proof of employment and income. So you might be asked for like your 3-month payslip or your employment letter. Now, for the right to rent share code, you would have to generate that on gov.uk to prove to your landlord or letting agent you have the legal right to rent and live in the UK. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, landlords and letting agents are not allowed to rent out a property to people who do not have the right to live and work and study here in the UK. Furthermore, some landlords or letting agents may conduct a credit check on you, like I mentioned earlier in this video, as part of the application process. So be prepared to consent to a credit check if required. Now, after the application process stage, the 4th stage is to sign the tenancy agreement. Now, once the information and documents you have provided during your application process has been verified and your application has been accepted, a tenancy agreement will be sent to you by the letting agent or landlord. Now, for those unfamiliar with tenancy agreements are standard in the UK. It is a document that outlines the terms of your lease, including rent amounts, duration, and responsibilities. Now, you want to ensure you read your tenancy agreements and ask questions if anything needs clarification. Now, you want to carefully review the tenancy agreement and ensure you understand all the terms and conditions before signing. Also, seek clarification on any clauses in your tenancy agreement that may be unclear or raises concerns. Now, the 5th stage will be to pay the deposit and rent in advance. After you have signed the tenancy agreement, you must now pay a security deposit, which is usually 6 weeks rent or 5 weeks rent, depending on what is on your tenancy agreement, and your first rent in advance. So here in the UK, that's just standard practice. You would have to pay your deposit, which is always 5 weeks or 6 weeks rent, and then you will pay 1 month in advance. So that's why when you're renting a house in the UK, the first month payment is always a lump sum, because as though you are paying times 2 of your rent. But not to worry, when you are leaving the house, your deposit will be refunded to you if you did not damage the property. So at this stage, we need to confirm the payment method and the payment details and obtain the receipt of your payment just for record's sake. Now, let me touch back on the deposit. So most landlords in the UK would require a security deposit. So the deposit is typically 1 month's rent or 5 weeks or 6 weeks rent, depending on what is on your tenancy agreement, and it is refundable at the end of your tenancy if there is no damages to the property. Now, if there's any damages to the property caused by you, the landlord would calculate what the damage is, the cost of the damage, and deduct the cost of damage from your security deposit. So they'll give you what is left from your deposit. So that's why you want to ensure that you do not destroy or damage the house you rent, so that you don't lose your security deposit or you don't lose a huge chunk from your security deposit. Now, you also want to ensure you understand the terms and conditions regarding the deposit, because some landlords in this UK can be scrupulous. Likewise, before renting property here in the UK, still on this deposit matter, you want to confirm that your landlord would register your security deposit with a government-approved deposit protection scheme to avoid story that touches the heart when it's time for you to move out. You see, a government-approved deposit protection scheme safeguards your deposit and ensures a fair dispute resolution process at the end of the tenancy. The 6th stage is inventory check. Before moving in, do a thorough inventory check with your landlord or letting agent and document the property's condition and content, such as existing furniture or maybe the white goods like the washing machine, the fridge, and things like that. Now, the inventory documentation will be helpful during the end of tenancy inspection to avoid dispute and unnecessary deduction from your deposit. You just want to have a detailed documentation of the house condition, so that when it's time for you to move out of the house and then your landlord or the letting agent claim that you spoiled something, you can always refer to the document and say, oh no, this was spoiled before I moved in. Remember, we took note of it when we did an inventory check. You just want to do an inventory check, so before you move in, take the time to record everything up front, and you will thank yourself later for this. Also, when renting a property here in the UK, it is essential to establish clear communication channels with your landlord or property management company. You see, establishing a clear communication would enable you to report any maintenance issue promptly and record all correspondence. By doing so, you'll be able to ensure that any necessary repairs are carried out on time, and you can keep track of all the important details during your stay. I would highly suggest you communicate with your landlord or letting agent via emails, so that you can document everything and have evidence when it comes time for you to move the property and they are trying to deduct what they are not meant to deduct from your security deposit. You can show them and say, oh, remember I told you this had spoiled and you didn't come to fix it, so now that I'm moving out, you can't deduct that from my deposit and stuff like that. Just make sure you keep record of everything. Even though you like to call your letting agent or landlord to complain or to inform them of something, just make sure you still find a way to write it down via text or email and send to them, so that when it comes to a time where you need all this evidence that you communicated something to them, I'm trying to say you didn't communicate to them, you can bring it out and say, yeah, I sent you this email, so and so. Trust me, I've done this for one apartment I lived in and one house I lived in, where the letting agent was trying to deduct something from my security deposit, and I'm like, no, you can't deduct that because this was this, that was that, and here's the communication, and here's the proof, and here's the evidence, and you just want to have all of those evidence. Step number 7 is to collect the keys and move in. Once the inventory check is complete, the landlord and the letting agent will hand over the keys to the property to you on the agreed upon move-in date, and you can start settling in after getting the keys. Now, do not forget to update your address with important institutions such as your bank and employer once you move in. Updating your address with this important institution would ensure that you receive the essential mails and parcels to your new address. You don't want your mails and parcels being sent to your old address. The last but not the least stage is to set up your utilities. Now, to ensure a hassle-free transition immediately after you move in, it is essential to contact the relevant utility providers and let them know you are the new occupant of the house. You see, contacting the relevant utility providers will allow you set up gas, electricity, water, and internet services in your name, ensuring you have access to all the necessary utilities and you can pay for them. Additionally, it is crucial to inform the local council where you now live so you can register and pay for your council tax. Now, I really hope that by following these steps, you can navigate the process of securing a rental property here in the UK smoothly. Now, before I sum up this video, I want to touch on cultural considerations. Now, it is essential to consider cultural norms when renting a property here in the UK to ensure a smooth experience. You see, in the UK, paying rent monthly and giving a month's notice before vacating a property is standard practice. Now, it's on a rare occasion you would see that some people in the UK would pay their rent yearly. Most people in the UK would pay their rent monthly. Also, respecting your neighbor's privacy is highly valued here in the UK, so you want to be mindful of your noise level, especially if you are living in an apartment flat or a terrace or a semi-detached house. You also want to avoid invading your neighbor's privacy and sharpen your neighborhood etiquette. Now, to integrate with the local community, it is important to familiarize yourself with the local norms and community events. You see, attending local events and engaging with community activities can help you connect with your neighbors and facilitate integration. Likewise, you want to connect with the local support network for immigrants in your area, because it is a great way to share experiences and gain insight on what it's like living in the UK as an immigrant. These networks can provide additional support and help and make you feel at home in a new country. To sum up this video, renting a house in the UK as a foreigner may seem daunting, but with careful planning and an understanding of the local rental landscape, you can navigate the process smoothly. Remember to research your desired location, prepare the necessary documentation, budget wisely, and be aware of the cultural nuances. If you find the information in this video helpful, give it a like and subscribe for more valuable information about life in the UK. With this, we've come to the end of the video. Thanks for watching and happy house hunting.